everybody, it's Brina and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing my January wrap-up. Now I'm actually super impressed with the amount of books that I have read this month. I have been taking a slight hiatus from reading. I have not been reading as much as I normally do just because school's back in session and I'm taking 4 literature courses, which is already a lot of reading in itself for that class. But I do have a couple books in this stack that I read for that class, so I will talk about those. Yeah, I just haven't been reading as much of books as I'd like to read. But so if you guys have any like recommendations for quick fun reads, let me know because I'd love to hear them because I'm struggling, y'all, to read. We're struggling here. So without further ado, let's just get on into this wrap up. So the very first book I read this month was Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alire-Sendez. And I really hope I said his name correctly because y'all know I'm unable to speak correctly. So this book follows Aristotle, and Aristotle is a 15-year-old boy with a lot to learn. He is hanging out with his parents, you know, living his best life, and he likes to go to the pool. So one day he goes to the pool and he decides he's gonna ask someone to teach him how to swim. And because of this, he ends up meeting Dante because Dante is a fabulous swimmer. Now, this book is kind of a book of self-discovery and Aristotle just trying to figure out where not only he belongs in his parents' world, but in his own world, because he is struggling with having 2 sisters who are 17 years older than him that cannot relate to him at all. He is struggling with the fact that his brother is in prison for a crime he knows nothing about because his parents won't tell him anything about it. He doesn't have very many friends, he doesn't have a girlfriend, and he's in high school and he's not very well liked. So he's just trying to figure out where he belongs in this world and struggling with his identity of being a Mexican American. Now, because of all this, he meets Dante, and Dante is a very forward-thinking, smart boy who knows how to swim. So they become fast friends, hanging out all the time. And when Dante discovers to Aristotle that he might like boys, he might be gay, Aristotle is kind of on the fence because he thinks he feels that way, but he doesn't know. And overall, this book was just absolutely phenomenal. Anyways, my cat needed to say hello. So when Aristotle discovers that Dante is gay, he starts to feel some type of way, not only about the friendship but about himself. So it's kind of a story of self-discovery, a story of learning who you are and who you want to be. And the writing it's a lyrical style of writing, and the writing is absolutely stunning. It is beautiful and I love the way it was written. This book is fantabulous, and if you are a future teacher like me, this is definitely something to keep in your room. I gave this book a 4.5 stars out of 5 stars, and I just don't really have anything negative to say about it, so I'll leave it at that. The next book I read this month was Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. So this book was going around BookTube, and I think it probably still is going around BookTube, but Rainbow Rowell has been such a controversial author lately. Kath and her sister moved to college, and they are very kind of don't know where they belong in this world and are just trying to figure out who they are. And Kath is a very big Simon Snow fan, so she is a fangirl, hence the name of the book. And when her sister kind of falls out of the love for Simon Snow, she tells Kath, you need to stop writing fan fiction, you need to kind of get in the adult world. And Kath doesn't want to do that. She wants to kind of take hold and keep this Simon Snow inside of her life because it is one of the only things that keeps her close to her sister. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. I think it was very fun to read. It was definitely something I could relate to a lot just because I was a fangirl myself for a super long time. I would have wrote fan fiction. I knew a lot of people who loved fangirling as well, and I was a believer. I was a directioner. I loved Ghost Adventures for a little bit, so fangirling was definitely a huge part of my life, so I could really relate to Kath and not wanting to let go of that. So this was something that I super enjoyed. Now overall, I gave this book a 4.5 stars out of 5, again just because it was a very cute story. I just, for some reason, it didn't hit as a 5 for me. The next book I read was Anxious People by Frederick Bachman, as this is a very hyped read as well. A lot of people have been talking about this book. So this book is about a bank robbery gone wrong, but it wasn't really a bank robbery. Honestly, I'm still really confused at what this book was about because it follows a ton of different people, and they're giving interviews about this bank robbery that wasn't really a bank robbery because it was a cashless bank, so he didn't really steal any money, and he accidentally went up to an apartment viewing and held people hostage, but he didn't want to hold people hostage, and I don't know. But the ending was fantastic, and I won't spoil it because it was definitely something that I didn't see coming. But just be aware if you're going to read this book, it's definitely one of those books you have to pay attention to not get lost in the story. But it is definitely a very good read. I loved all the characters, I loved the way it was written, but it is one of those books that you really have to pay attention to. And just because of that, I gave it a 3 out of 5 because at times I tend to drift off when I'm reading, so I would have to go back 3 or 4 chapters to kind of actually register what was going on. So 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. So this was actually a book for my YA Lit class, just like Aristotle and Dante discover the secrets of the universe. The Outsiders is a book that I read in 8th grade, and I will never not love this story. So this book follows Ponyboy Curtis, and Ponyboy Curtis is a greaser in his little town of Oklahoma in the 50s, 60s. It's around that time period. And they have a lot of drama with socias, which are kind of like the socials, the preppies, and greasers are kind of the leather jacket, plaid bikers you think of, but they walk around, they don't have motorcycles. Well, one of them has a motorcycle, but that's besides the point. Ponyboy gets himself in a little bit of trouble when him and Johnny Curtis meet some girls at a drive-in theater, and they end up walking them home, and their boyfriends pull up, have a problem with them, and they come back and beat them up, and one of the characters accidentally murders one of the boys, so they go into hiding, and this book is fantastic. It will make you cry. The movie is incredible. It definitely teaches you a lot of things about just because you're blood doesn't mean you're family, and just because you're not blood doesn't mean you aren't family. So I personally know I have a lot of friends who are family that aren't blood to me, and I have a lot of family whose blood that I don't consider family. So this is definitely one of those books that gets you thinking about family and who is most important to you. And I will never not love this book. It teaches you so many lessons. It teaches you the absolute incredible lesson of make sure you know who you can call when you get yourself in a little bit of trouble. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars because this is my second time reading it, and it never not is amazing for me. This will definitely be one of the books that I want to teach in my high school classroom because it is just one of those books that just teaches you so many lessons that I feel like people should learn. The next book I read this month was The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. So this is a hyped book on YouTube as well. Apparently January was like the month of hyped books because everybody talks about the Raven Boys, and the first person I ever heard talk about the Raven Boys was Haley from Haley in Bookland, and she raves about it, and she talks about how much she loves it and how amazing it is. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give it a try. So I actually listened to the audiobook for this book, and I don't think that's something that I would personally recommend for this book, just because the way it's written, I don't think you can get the most out of it with an audiobook. So I think I might revisit it at some point as a physical read. But this book follows Blue, and Blue's parents are kind of psychics, and they are the traditional 1-800 psychic phone number you call to get a reading, you know, all that good stuff. A lesson she's always taught herself is to stay away from the Raven Boys. The Raven Boys are a school for these kind of very rich, preppy students that are all boys. So, and it is also told from the perspective of some of the Raven Boys and how they are going through their own stuff as well, and how Blue and the Raven Boys come together to kind of work together and kind of not solve mysteries like Scooby-Doo, but they just kind of work together to fix things in their life that needs fixing, I guess. It's hard to explain this book, but overall I did enjoy it, but it was just not what I expected. I think just because the audiobook kind of threw me off a lot. So I'm gonna give this book a 3 out of 5 for now. I'm hoping when I revisit it, I'm gonna like it a little bit more as a physical read, but we'll see. I don't know. This is a super chill wrap up. I don't know why. The next book I read this month was The Fill-In Boyfriend by Casey West, which I believe was a Haley Bookland recommendation as well. I have a list of books that I hear booktubers talking about, and when I buy books, I pick from that list. So this book follows Gia Montgomery, and her boyfriend leaves her literally in the parking lot on prom night outside of the prom venue. And if my boyfriend ever did that to me, I would never talk to that boy again. But her friends think he's fake because they've never met him. He lives at college 2 hours away, so they have never met him. So this was going to be the first night they meet him. So obviously she can't show up empty-handed because people are going to think she was lying about a boyfriend, okay? And she ends up recruiting this guy who's just chilling in his car waiting for his sister to come into prom with her and be her fill-in boyfriend. So it kind of sparks this romance, but it also sparks this kind of drama with her friends, and it's just a shit show. This book, such the potential, it really did, and it ruined it for me with just the way that Gia acted. She had this very pretentious, I'm better than you attitude toward everything. Toward Bradley, which was her boyfriend, toward the fake boyfriend, which I can't remember his name. Hayden. His name is Hayden. She had that attitude toward everybody, and like even Hayden's sister, her friends, like she has a friend in her friend group that she absolutely despises, and she only hangs around with them because the other two do, and I don't like that. I feel like that's very two-sided friendship. We have friends that are telling other friends things that are, this was all around just toxic. Gia was toxic, her friendships were toxic, the way she treated people were toxic. It had the potential, and it didn't hit it for me. Overall, I gave this book a 3 out of 5. It could have been a lot better. I enjoyed the plot. The plot was amazing. It was like a perfect romance story. It's just I didn't like the way Gia treated people, and that's a big thing for me, especially in books, is if you are asking a favor to someone and then you treat them like garbage, what are you doing with your life? The next book I read was also for my YA Lit class. That was The Fault in Our Stars by John Green, and this is the second time that I've read this book. So this book, if you do not know what this book is about, it follows Augustus Waters and Hazel, and Hazel has a chronic form of cystic fibrosis, I think. No, she has cancer. I'm reading a book about a kid who has cystic fibrosis. That's why I thought that's what it was. She has cancer, and her doctor thinks since she is dying, it would be the perfect time to put her in therapy. So she goes to kind of group therapy to all these kids with terminal illnesses, which is super sad and dramatic in its own. Could you imagine? But and at the end of every session, they like talk about every single person that's came through that has passed. So if that's not gruesome, I don't know what is. And she meets Augustus Water there, who is there with his friend Isaac, who was about to lose his eyes. They end up getting along really well, and they start to be friends, and I really enjoyed this book. I think the first time I ever read it was like in 10th grade, and I went to see the movie in theaters with a good friend of mine, and it was amazing. And it's a very sad story because it's really about love, what happens after you lose it, and I just really loved this book. This, I think, is the only John Green book I've ever read, so maybe I'll give him another go. I don't know yet. We'll see. But this book I gave a 4.5 out of 5. And I also read Love and Gelato by Jenna Evans Welch. So this book follows Lena, and Lena is going to Tuscany, Italy to live with her father after her mother suddenly passes away. And while she's there, someone gives her a journal that her mother wrote while she was in Italy living as a teenager, and I loved this book. I have a whole review talking about it coming up, so I'm just gonna leave most of my comments for the chapter chat that I am going to talk about. Film, I don't know what I'm talking about at this point, but I really like the plot on this book. The whole, I found my mother's journal, I am going to figure out what she did while she was in Italy. I just really liked this plot and this story and the characters, and I had no issues with it. I loved it. It was a 4.5 out of 5 though, because I don't know how to rate books 5 stars apparently. And the very last book I read, it was an audiobook and I do not own it yet, was No Exit by Taylor Adams. So this book follows a girl who is on her way home from Colorado. She is in college and she's going to visit her mother, who is dying from pancreatic cancer. And because of this, she is driving in a snowstorm in the middle of the night to go see her mother, but the road ends up getting too bad and she ends up pulling over to a rest stop and staying the night there. she finds out that someone has a child locked in a dog cage in their backseat. And this book is basically her trying to get this child to freedom. And honestly, it was amazing. I would totally recommend the audiobook because it had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. I absolutely loved it. I didn't have any issues with it. It was amazing. Amazing. 5 out of 5 stars for that one, actually. That was my only 5 out of 5 this month. So that's pretty good. All right, that is going to be the end of my January wrap up. This was just a super chill, hanging out, sweater, you know, chill wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure you give it a super big thumbs up. Make sure you comment down below and tell me if you've read any of these books. If you like this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I upload every Monday and Thursday at 11:45 a.m. Eastern time. And yeah, without further ado, I'll see you in my next video.